Good morning, everyone. My name is David Zabka, and just like to welcome everybody here this morning to our Point Locate webinar. So what we're going to be covering here this morning is going to be the new features to 7.3 for our point location. A lot of these things are going to make it a lot easier to locate points. A lot of them will eliminate the need for as many construction lines as we've needed in the past. So some of these things are pretty nice, make it a lot quicker and easier to locate different items in our model. So I'm going to first start off here, just have our simple basic training model input. And just to start off with, I'm going to go to a plan view here, just at 107-8, and I'm going to come off to the right side of the model here. And what I'm going to first introduce to you would be the new point locator that we call online. Now, I'm just going to use this in conjunction right now with member add beam. So I'll click my member add beam button over here. And then the point locator for online is on my default toolbar up here. I'll go ahead and make that the active point locator. And we can see what that is going to do for us is that's just going to snap to any erection view line or any construction line along that. Okay, I'm showing you these. Most of what I'm going to demonstrate, I'm going to be showing you in modeling. This also works in Drawing Editor as well. So most of the things that we see here in modeling, we're going to be able to do the same thing in Drawing Editor as well. Keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm just going to pick any point right along my erection view or my grid line here. And again, we're going to notice a couple things. I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to hit my online point locator again. A couple things we're going to notice now. One is that first point that I picked, we now see kind of a temporary yellow circle around there to indicate where that first point was that we picked. The other thing we're going to notice is when we drag our mouse, we get a dimension shown there that indicates to us where the current point is, how far away from the first point my second point is snapping at this point. So right now, if I were to left click right there, I'd get a beam that were 16 foot, 6 3/4 long. Okay. Another thing we're going to notice is, notice next to my point locator here, I have a little indication there that says, at this point in time, it just says on. So that indicates to me what is actually being snapped to. In this case, it's online. When we start using more point locators here, that indication is going to change a little bit and show different things based on what point location is being selected. Another thing that is new here is once I select that first point, notice as I move my mouse around, it's going to actually snap to and create temporary construction lines every 45 degrees. So notice when I swing around here, it gives me that temporary construction line. Here I got one at 90, again 45, and then at 0. Okay, so temporary construction lines get created at 45-degree increments. Another thing is, and we'll notice that there, when I pause my mouse over a point, I get what we call a temporary point there. And I'm going to kind of redo this here because I screwed that up. So let me just hit beam add again, pick my first point, and now I was mentioning that when you pause your mouse, we get a temporary point located. The key to that is that your mouse isn't just paused anywhere on the screen, but inside of the point location target. So I'm going to pause my mouse in there. Now I see a yellow circle get created in there, and that created a temporary point for me. Now as I go around here, my mouse will snap to 45-degree increments, create those temporary construction lines for that temporary point here as well. Again, the key to that is pausing your mouse inside of that target. So I'm going to create actually another temporary point out in space over here. Okay. Again, I get temporary construction lines at 45 degrees for that, and I can use those in conjunction with, in this particular case, let's say intersection of construction lines. So I'll go up and activate that point locator. And now my mouse is actually going to snap to the intersection of those construction lines, those temporary construction lines, I should say. Again, you'll notice here now my mouse, when it snaps to that point, instead of saying on beside it, it now says intersection CL construction line, so it indicates to us that. I could also use that with intersection construction line and member. So if I activate that, okay, now my mouse will snap to intersection construction line and member. That does also work in conjunction with the temporary construction lines as well. Here we can see indicated intersection construction line and member. It actually gives us the member number and the piece mark that is being snapped to as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and actually, one more thing I do want to show you here. The next thing that we have is what we call toggle annotations point. So what toggle annotations point does, this is actually what displays to us the dimension that we see there. It's also what displays the temporary points on our screen. So we do have, again, on our default toolbar, we have a little toggle annotations point button up here. If I turn that off, okay, you're going to notice my temporary temporary points go away. I don't see the dimensions on my window. I do, however, still get all of the temporary construction lines for the temporary points that I've input. Okay, so even though I can't see those temporary points, they are still there. Okay, I'm going to turn this back on. And now that turns all my temporary points, my dimensions back on there as well. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and locate. Maybe I need to locate my beam out here at the intersection of those two lines there, so I can left click. As soon as I left click out here, as soon as I perform this command, notice how all those temporary points are going to disappear and that dimension disappears as well. So then I can go ahead and just input my information in here to this member edit window, and now I have my beam there. Okay. Other things I can do, let's go up here and I'm just going to pick my first point. Now this time, let's say as I drag my mouse over in this direction, let's say I know that I need a 20-foot beam. So I can simply type in there 20-0. Notice that dimension gets updated as I'm typing. I can backspace to change that. You're going to notice up here in your status line that that is also going to indicate that 20-0 for you. And now, as I drag my mouse, I'm just setting the direction that I want to go 20 feet. Okay, so if I need this at 45 degrees along that temporary construction line, I can just go ahead and drag up here, and as soon as I pick my second point, then notice here my work point to work point length is 20-0, so the 20 feet that I typed. Okay, I can take that another step further, and let's say I locate this first point, and I know in this particular case, maybe I don't know the distance, but maybe I know that it needs to be at a certain degree. So I'm just going to go ahead and type the @ symbol, and notice it starts to change my dimension on the screen here. So I now have the @ symbol, and if you look at the status line, it also shows the @ symbol. And maybe I'm going to go 10 degrees, so I'll just type 10. And now what that does is that's actually setting the degrees that I want that to be placed along. If I increase that, maybe maybe I need it to come over this way, so I would input a dimension greater than 90 degrees. Maybe let's go, say, 120. Okay, so now I'm just clicking and dragging to locate at 120 this direction. You can also, instead of using the @ symbol on your keyboard, if you just simply type an A on the keyboard, that will do the same thing as well. And again, I'm going to go at 10, and then I'm just going to go ahead and pick that point. Again, input my information, say OK. Now I have that beam at 10 degrees. I can use those, typing the dimension and typing the angle in conjunction with one another. So if I pick my first point, and now I know that I need a beam, let's go 20-0, and that needs to be at 24 degrees. So I typed 20-0 at 24. And now it doesn't matter what point I pick. Notice my mouse is clear up here in the upper left corner of the screen, but my point is actually snapping over there 20 feet at 24 degrees from the first point that I picked. So wherever I left click then, that's what I'm going to get. Notice my work point to work point length plan is 20-0. Okay, something else new that's kind of nice, and I'll go ahead and show you this with the ruler command. When I use the ruler command, and I'm going to go ahead and just pick the endpoints of my beam here, and then I'll pick a point along this line. I'm going to go ahead and pick the same first point, and then I'll use the exact point to snap to the second point. Okay. Notice on screen I get called out now that 24 degrees, so I don't always have to use the ruler window and go to the angle to figure out what that angle is. It displays it right there. If I pick another point, notice it's going to update that angle for me. Okay. Once I'm done, return out of the command, and then it destroys that indicator there on screen for me. So we've showed you a few things here. I'm going to go ahead and delete these beams that I added out in space here, and I'm going to actually show you maybe a couple ways that you might actually use this online point locator and such here. So what I'm going to do is I have a stair over here, and maybe I have a platform over here that needs to be similar to our stair landing there. So what I'm going to do is select my member add beam, and I have an intersection construction line up here, so I'll go ahead and use that point locator just like I normally would in the past. Now I'm going to go ahead, and what I want to do is I want this point to come out here, and I need it to be even with the end of that stair platform. So I'm going to use vertex point, and I'm going to snap right to the end of there. I'm going to hover over that, create a temporary point, go back to intersection construction line, so I can now snap to that temporary construction line where it intersects here. Okay, input my information in there, and I'm going to go with a smaller beam. Let's just say 12-22. Let's just adjust this here a little bit. Okay, so now I can go ahead and use my exact point. Bring my point over here, leave everything the same. And there I have a little platform. Now, I also showed you inputting a beam to where you could just type in the dimension to get those points. I'm just going to go ahead and select this beam that I put out here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to do a move stretch, locate my reference point, and maybe I need to move that 3 inches, so I just type 3. And here I'm just setting the direction with the way that my mouse is dragged. So I just want to drag that straight up 3 inches, left click, and it moves that 3 inches up. Go ahead and process this so we can see it in solid and what I created there. Probably should have done a different connection, but that's all right. We kind of get the idea there. So now the next thing here, I could do, I'm going to go ahead and go into my ISO view here, and I'm going to isolate, say, this member over here with a couple shear tabs on it. So I'll select that, use my keyboard shortcut MI, and I just need to cut a section view right here along these shear plates. So easy enough. I'll go ahead and select a new view. I'll use free point, pick my point down here. Now I can use online, gives me those temporary construction lines. Do that. So I created a quick section view without having to add any extra construction lines or anything like that. I just picked my 2 points. Okay, so got that there. I could also do that in Drawing Editor. So maybe I'll grab this other beam down here. I'm going to show the detail this. I just want to remind anybody, if you do have any questions come up as we go along here, not necessarily going to be answering any here live, but when the webinar is over, I do encourage you to go ahead and email your support rep here or give us a call and ask any questions that you might have come up. So anyways, I have this beam detailed now, and I want to go ahead and cut a section view right here in Drawing Editor. So just to show you, all these point locators work the same in Drawing Editor as they do in modeling. Come up to my View pull down, go down to Section View, select View from which to cut, New View. I can use that online point locator since I have a construction line placed here for me already. Go ahead and pick my 2 points, set my depth limits, and there I have my section view then. So makes it quick, makes it easy to create and locate lines that are straight on your screen here. We didn't necessarily have that full capability in the past. Okay. So we can do that, use it to cut section views. Maybe going back over here to this platform, maybe we got a revision on this. Okay. So this revision says we need to extend this platform out maybe 2 feet. So I'll just go ahead and grab everything quick, move stretch members, exact point, drag my mouse down here, 2 feet. I don't have to type the negative or positive because the direction that I drag my mouse is actually setting the direction that will go 2 feet. Left click, confirm that, and there I have that an extra 2 feet out then. Going back to the ISO view, maybe I need to copy a member, and I'll just grab, say, this beam over here. I need to just copy that 6 feet up, straight up in the same direction as my column goes. So I'll just right-click, go here to Copy Members. I'm going to just do a single member copy. Select my exact point over here for the reference point, and then I'm going to use exact point again for the reference point, and I want to move that up 6 feet, so I'll just type 6-0. My point is not actually snapping to the exact point up here. Again, I'm just using that to set the direction in which to copy this member. The 6 feet that I typed dictates how far that goes, and then I just need to confirm that. So I'll left click yes, could continue copying. I'm going to return, but now I have a copy of that beam 6 feet up along that column again. Where else might I use this? Let's just say I have some horizontal braces, so I'm going to go to my second floor plan here, and maybe I have a horizontal brace here that needs to be at 15 degrees. I don't necessarily want to go in and set up a bunch of construction lines for that, so I'll go over to my Member Add pop-out, Member Add Horizontal Brace. I'm just going to pick a point here. I'm not too precise here at this point. And I said I wanted that to be at 15 degrees, right? So I'll just go ahead and type A. That gives me the at symbol at 15. And now as I drag that, it only snaps to a 15-degree line. One thing you're going to notice is as I drag this, as I'm dragging this mouse up along grid line B here, notice that my point also extends where I'm actually snapping to. So it's not necessarily along that same line as where my mouse is, but rather the distance from the first point to my second point, but at that 15 degrees. So in this case, I might want to just go ahead and hit my intersection construction line and member. So I get that point right there. Left click. I can input my information for this horizontal brace. In this case, I know I'm going to have to force that left end, so I'm going to do that. And now I have my horizontal brace at 15 degrees. And I did something wrong there, so didn't quite get my first point picked right. That's okay. We get the idea of how we can quickly do that without having to put in a bunch of different construction lines. So that was online. We showed you toggle annotations point, which turns my temporary points and my dimensions off. And then we also seen how we can type in either the angle, or we can also type in the dimension or the distance that we want to pick our points as well. The next thing we'll look at is what we call polar point. Okay, polar will allow us to snap to certain degree increments, and it will also allow us to snap to 1 inch length increments. So as I hit my member add beam and I come up here and select my polar point locator, okay, and I actually select my first point here and then hit polar point. Okay, with polar point, notice that my degrees now is displayed as I drag my mouse. We didn't have that before, but we do now. And it's actually snapping at this point in time to 0.1 degree increments. Also notice as I drag my mouse, it's now no longer displaying like 1/16 inch increments. It's displaying only 1 inch increments. We can adjust the degree that gets snapped to, but at this point in time it's always going to snap to 1 inch increments. So if I want to adjust the degree that gets snapped to there, I'll go up to my locate pull down and I'll go to point location configuration, and I have a polar degree snap in here. So maybe I want that to be snapped to 1 degree increments. Now we can see as I drag my mouse it gets snapped to 1 degree increments. I can adjust that even further. Maybe I only want 5 degree increments, so polar degree snap. And now I'm snapping to 5 degree increments. I'm going to go ahead and just change that back to 1. So that's nice. It quickly gives us a visual of the degree there if we have polar point on. Now, you can, again, still type in your degree here. So if I type in at 15, it's still snapping to that 15 degrees, and that's what's going to get snapped to unless I clear that out. That can be pretty handy there. Okay, you notice if polar is not turned on, okay, remember if polar is not turned on, we don't see the degree increment on our screen, but remember you can still type that at 15 if polar is not turned on to get a specific degree there. Delete that member again. Now the next point locator we'll talk about is ortho. Okay, what ortho is going to do is ortho is going to actually lock along the X, Y, or Z axis according to a user coordinate system that we'll show you how to set here. So first off, you're going to notice on my toolbar I have a bunch of buttons up here for align UCS, toggle UCS, rotate, etc. These are not on the default toolbar. You will need to go into your toolbar configuration and under the locate pull down, command group, you're going to have down towards the bottom all these buttons for the UCS. So if you want to use that, you'll need to go ahead and put those buttons on your toolbar. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to hit toggle UCS. When I do that, I get my indicator up here in the upper right corner. Now I haven't actually changed this or aligned this to anything. So currently the UCS is the same as what my global coordinates would be. Okay. If I want to align this to say maybe it's going to be aligned with this sloping beam, I can come up here, select Align UCS to Object. Status line is going to ask me select member or material. I'll pick my beam, and now notice that my indicator up here changed. I can undo that using the Undo UCS button. So notice how that changes back. Again, Align will align it with a beam or materials axis. We do have options to change the location of the indicator. Right now it's up in the upper right corner. If I want to change where that's at, that's under my User Options. Under the Interface tab, we have an indicator position, so you can choose to show that at different positions on your screen. There's also the option to show indicator at origin, which is very handy. I'm going to turn that on, and now it should move that indicator over here for that beam, the origin of that beam's coordinate system, which I align to. Now, one of the things you're going to want to watch out for here is, let's say I just grab my ruler and I snap to this point up here. Take a look at the XYZ feedback at the top of my screen there. It indicates to me 0, 0, 0. That's not the global coordinates. This is the 0, 0, 0 point of my user coordinate system. Okay, so don't want anybody to get confused if they have their UCS on and that looks a little different. Now, even though I do have the user coordinate system on, if I were to input a beam, it is still going to want the elevation of the global coordinates. So in this particular case, if I edit this beam, the end elevation is 126.9.5. It isn't 0, which would be the Z distance at that particular point. Okay, so how do we use this? How is this helpful? Well, you can see I'm in an ISO view here. I've aligned the UCS to this beam, and if I rotate around here, we can see it is sloping. So if I need to move maybe all of these members a certain distance in the X coordinate, I can select those. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to move stretch members. I'm going to pick a reference point. I'm going to turn on Ortho, so toggle Ortho up here. Again, this should be on the default toolbar. And now notice, no matter where my mouse is at, the actual point that's being snapped up to here is along that X-axis, or it'll be along the Y or Z-axis. Okay, so I'm just going to drag this, and maybe I want everything to move 3 feet, so I can combine it with that typing of the dimension. It's 3 feet. I'm just using Ortho to specify the direction, and it's along the X-axis. So pick my second point. All those move 3 feet. I have to confirm it. Now if I rotate around here, we can see everything moved along that slope since I used Ortho. So that's Ortho, and as soon as I turn this off, so I can come up here, hit toggle UCS, that turns that off. Now going back just to what I showed you with that ruler, if I snap to that point, notice the XYZ feedback at the top of my window now reports back to me again the global coordinates rather than the coordinate from that UCS. So that was Ortho. The next thing we're going to touch on here is what we call offset controls. So the offset controls you're going to see down here at the bottom of your window. You have this X plus, Y plus, Z plus. And for this, I'm going to open my roof framing plan. So I'm at the top of my plan here. And you did notice when I showed you a couple things there, this roof is sloping here. So if I just go ahead and use my ruler right now to show you a few things, I'm going to use exact point. That should snap to the exact point of my column. Notice the XYZ feedback at the top of the window indicates to me the Z direction or the elevation is 126.9.5. Well, maybe I know that I have something 2.5 inches down from that, so I can come down here to my offset controls at the bottom, type in there -2.5. Now when I locate my point there, snap to that point, it offsets where I'm snapping to, and now notice the XYZ feedback at the top gives me 126-7. Looking up here, okay, 126-7. I can come up 2.5. If I type in a positive 2.5, I now have 127-0. You can align that to either the global coordinate system, or if I hit the little button next to the Z field, notice that button will turn to kind of an I. That means that the offsets would be relative to your view coordinate system, which would always indicate X horizontal on the screen, Y vertical on the screen, and Z in and out. In this particular case, it's the same as my global coordinate system, so we're not going to see a difference. Okay, now be careful with this also. If anybody uses the Z filter, okay, I have a Z filter on the top of my toolbar up here. If I turn that Z filter on, that will only allow me to pick a point in the current plane that I'm in. In this case, I'm in a plan view. I know my current elevation is 126.0, so when I snap to that point, even though I have an offset down here, my XYZ feedback shows me 126-0 because the Z filter locks it in that plane. So watch out for that when you're using that. Okay, so how are we going to use the offset controls? Well, first off, what I'm going to show you is over here on my roof framing plan, I have a couple sloping beams, and I need some beams to frame in between there. We're going to see that these are not actually sloping at the same slope, so they have a different slope, but I have some upset beams that need to go between here. I'm going to go back to my roof framing plan quick. So these upset beams, they actually need to frame at 3 inches above both of these beams. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to do my member add beam. I'm going to make sure my Z down here is set to 3 inches, so that will bring it up out of the screen. And I'm going to use the intersection construction line and member point locate. Okay, so when I snap to this point, notice it indicates intersection construction line and member. Just take a look quick up here at my XYZ feedback. When I snap to that point, I have 126.4 3/8. If I were to come down here to my offset controls, if I hit the X, that's going to completely clear that. And now notice I get 126.1 3/8 in the XYZ feedback. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and change that back to 3. So I'm going to pick my point, use intersection construction line and member again. I'm going to go ahead and leave that section size. I'm going to change the web rotation here, however. And then I'm going to go ahead and continue picking these points. XYZ offset is still at 3 in the Z direction. Okay, I'll just process and create solids quick. Turn it to solid. And now if I rotate around and look, I can see all those beams are 3 inches above the points that I picked. Okay, so we could use our Z offset in that way. Another way maybe we could use this is maybe we're going to use it with joists. Okay, so maybe I have a bunch of joists over here. I can do member add joist. I'm just going to put in a joist with a seat of 2.5 inches, so 2.5 in my Z, intersection construction line and member again. And let's just go easy 10K1. I'll go with a bolted connection. And then I can go ahead and continue on down the line here. So it makes it easy. I just put in that 2.5, and then I don't have to adjust all my elevations because each one of those would be at a different elevation. So if I look here, I think I snapped to the wrong intersection point there is why they're down a little bit. But we can see, kind of get the idea what that Z offset does for us, where it offsets the point that we're actually picking there. Okay, another thing that we could do with this, and this kind of got brought up last week when I was talking to a customer on the phone. We were talking about handrails, and it used to be fairly difficult, maybe not even done hardly at all, but if I had a handrail that needed to be sloping down my stair, and then we have it flat on that return, and then I needed to turn the corner, and that all needed to be one piece, that might have been pretty difficult to add in to my model. So I'm going to go over to this handrail, or excuse me, this stair here. First thing I'm going to do, I am going to use construction line add material. And the reason why is I want to locate this gauge line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from the exact point of this stair over to my gauge line. So it's 1 foot 7 3/4. Okay, now I'm going to hit F2. I'm going to grab my handrail member. And top of steel for left end, I'm going to go ahead and use intersection construction line. We'll locate our first point up here. Right end, we'll locate our second point. Top of steel for left return end. Okay, I want that down here at my stair, and what I want to do is I want to offset that in the X direction minus 1 foot 7 3/4. Excuse me, I typed that wrong there. So we have 1 foot 7 3/4 and intersection construction line and member. So we're snapping to this point here, but the point that is actually going to be located is over here on my return. Okay, locate top of steel for right return end. I'm going to clear my offset, and then I'm just going to go ahead and pick my point over here on the left of my stair return. My handrail window is going to come up here. I'm going to go ahead and just leave the default options. Say OK. Right click to return. And I did kind of screw up because I should have input a Z offset here as well to account for my nosing dimension. But we get the idea there of what we can do with that offset control then by being able to locate that handrail there quickly, easily on that stair, plus at the top flat. Okay, the last thing I want to go ahead and show you, and I am going to import a reference drawing for this and kind of demonstrate the point locators with a reference drawing. And actually, I'll just go ahead and to make this easy here, I will detail an erection view since I can add my erection views. And let's just grab a couple of my plan views there. So now that I have my erection views detailed, I'll go ahead and add one of those as a reference drawing. Okay, so I might have cleaned that up before I added it, but we'll get the idea here. So now, since I have that reference drawing added in the model here, as I'm locating points, I have up here a reference drawing point locator. What that allows me to do is that allows me to snap to exact points for lines. So that would be like the end of lines as you would snap to them in Drawing Editor. You can also snap to intersections of those lines. We have midpoint. You can see all these under the Locate pull down. We have intersection construction line and real line. When you see that real line, that's referring to lines of a reference drawing. We have intersection, real line, and member, and then intersection of just a simple real line as well. Now, even though those point locators may be active at the current time, so we do have those active. If we simply hit reference drawing up here, this point locator for reference drawing, that completely turns that off for all the snaps to my reference drawings. Turn that back on. Now I'm snapping to those reference drawing points again. So then the final thing I want to point out to everybody here is that our auto point configuration is now actually been renamed. It's now called a point location configuration. And one of the benefits that we've added with this is if you come in here and you modify your point location configuration for your auto point, this is now actually saved. So I just did for the ruler, and if I go ahead and just turn all of these off and only leave exact point on, okay, it used to be in the past that when you would exit out of the model and open it back up, all those points would be reset back to a default value. Well, now when I use that ruler and I were to hit auto point, notice that exact point is the only one that is active now. If I take a look, exact point is the only one that's checked in there. So auto point configuration is now actually used. So this concludes our webinar here for the new point locate features. Like I said, if you have any questions, please go ahead and email your SDS2 support representative or give us a call here. We should be able to answer any questions that you may have come up. So I want to just thank everybody for attending, and everybody have a great day.